Morning, Chuck.
Howdy. How you doing?
Doing pretty good. And yourself?
Not bad.
Good. I'm glad I'm in the right room, Zoom room. I was a little worried there for a minute, but
No, you're in.
that's good. Oh, there's another person. There's Mary.
Oh, so is it looks kind of cloudy back there?
It is. We have got a little cooler weather for us in the 70s is pretty cool. And we finally got a half-inch of rain yesterday, day before yesterday, across those 2 days. We're very thankful for our half-inch of rain.
Yeah, yeah. I understand. Hello, Mary.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mary. I think Christy emailed just about a minute or so ago and said that she was not going to be able to make it. I don't know about the others. I've not heard from them.
I have not either. It should be on everyone's calendar. Christy is the one who said that this time really doesn't work for her.
I see.
So we may want to look at maybe doing a doodle poll.
Sure, you're welcome to
changing
do that.
around.
Absolutely.
Maybe
Whatever.
we can go back to that Friday time you had.
Yeah, that's all okay with me. Whatever is best for the larger group. I'm perfectly fine with that. It sounds like a winner.
I tell you, it's difficult to get everybody, the board meeting, especially now that we have we have 3 people that are out of the country, and they're on opposite ends of the globe from each other and from us. So it's difficult to find a time. And the board
is.
meeting, so it's 2 a.m. in Guam at noon here for our board meeting for
Sure.
thank you. It was there. I mean, I could see it back there.
Yeah.
And of course, Brian and a Juice are in Europe, or at least a European time zone. But yeah, it's hard.
Yeah,
Mary
we
and I
had that
chatted.
issue with the website committee when Charu first went to Guam and Brian was still in Dubai.
Yeah. And that's he's in Italy now, but now a Juice is down in UAE territory. So yeah, it's a tough time.
Mary
And
and I chatted a little bit about, the time, and I'm pretty flexible. It's
Yeah.
whatever y'all, I have no agenda on having it on a certain day, and it's whatever's better for the
Yeah.
greater whole is okay with me. So
yeah, Mary and I don't have much choice either as paid staff. So
I hear you.
whatever works, it'll work for us.
Well, it may be just us 3. Is this relatively common, people being unable to attend? Or, how's this working?
My
Um,
experience is, yeah, it's fairly common that there are people who don't manage to make it.
For
Yeah,
various reasons.
I think that maybe we take this opportunity for this committee alone, because you have so many new members, that we ought to try to remind them more often. I do think hitting them again for a time frame could help them. But there's some that I have to remind the chairs that, we've got a meeting. So it's not uncommon. So, and through this process, and what we want to accomplish is seeing those that don't ever make it. That's valuable information as we move forward about who can we count on, who can we not. And it rises to the top. We can see who those people are. So yeah, I would suggest we just do a doodle to catch another time frame, and then try to remind them more often than not. Now, granted, we're all professionals and we all have access to a calendar, and we ought to be able to read the damn thing, but, you know,
I do usually send the calendar invite again the morning
Yeah.
of, but my phone has been nonstop since I got in this morning.
Well, that was two of my emails were right there. So, because I was like, is this Monday or Friday? Because I have this other invite, but I think Renee had sent out something some time ago, and hopefully that has not confused people. I was a little worried about it. But part of that's just having a lot of military members. They're going to be, they cannot not do what they're there to do. And so if that made
Yeah.
any sense. And so part of that, and I'm perfectly flexible, but I'd still like to take this time with you guys to kind of, because this is, I think, recorded and will go down somewhere in the archive that at least the committee is doing things regardless of the attendance in the meeting, that progress is being made. And I
Yeah.
think that that's worth 30 minutes or so of our time. I don't really have a formal agenda. One of the things I'm hoping for is to be able to get the minutes from the last committee so they could be used and presented in the meeting on a regular basis. That way we can at least review those and get those approved. That's kind of a formal function. Otherwise, don't know kind of how they're there, but that
And
we work
usually
on that.
I will have minutes to you before
Okay.
the next meeting, but I was absent last
I
time.
understand. Oh, this is not a complaint. It's just
Yeah, I get it. I get
a
it.
process. I'm not so sure the committee has ever done that. Frankly, I know in the membership committee, there was nothing like that before.
Yeah.
And now that we've combined it with certification, I take this committee very seriously. I think this is an important one, in my opinion. Not that the rest are not, but I mean, my goodness, the whole certification process is kind of what this whole thing is about.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's right.
So I'm taking it pretty seriously. So that was kind of an admin piece. I think just to kind of recap some old business, I think, Mary, we have accomplished the certificate issue of separating the BCD certificate from the specialty certificates from a membership certificate. I think we have resolved that issue.
I have not had a chance to design a membership certificate yet. It is on my to-do list. And as soon as I can get it put together, we'll start sending those out. I did have a discussion with Chuck about the BCDs and that the clinical membership,
Uh-huh.
and whether there needed to be another certificate for that.
I don't think so.
Okay,
In my
great.
opinion, that's my personal opinion, Chuck.
I agree.
Feel free to disagree.
We agree.
Because I have my two are on the wall.
Yeah.
And to the left of my state license is my BCD, which is the level of membership I have.
Yeah.
And it's a certification. It works simultaneously.
Yeah.
And then to the right of my license is the board certification in clinical supervision. And that makes perfect sense to me. If I was not a BCD level member, and say if I was a student, mine would just say, instead of board certified diplomate in clinical social work, it would say, a member, a student member, something to that effect. And of course, I wouldn't have the other one. So I think it's resolved. It's just a matter of process of implementing what has been resolved. That's what I'm thinking there. So I'm not going to bring that one up again, just because I think that one's a dead horse, so to speak. What do y'all think?
I agree. Graduate students have been getting their certificates and their certificate of insurance.
I think that's great.
They usually have those within 24 hours of joining or renewing.
I think that's great. I've sent a few y'all's way and they have came back and said that it's working out well. So given that I bump into doctoral students on a daily basis, they're very interested in this thing, especially when their major professor is a member of it. They want to
Mhm.
emulate that. And so you probably have bumped into a few students I've sent your way.
We are still trying to work out how exactly to handle the doctoral candidates because of the liability insurance.
Sure.
We have
Well,
a call with HPSO on Friday to discuss that.
I think that's wise if they're licensed. Now, some doctoral students are not licensed. Now, kind
Mhm.
of my thinking is a student is a student is a student. However, if they don't possess a license, the student insurance it's fine because that's all they are. But if
Mhm.
they have a license, they can still be a student member. However, student malpractice will not cover them for professional practice. It
Right.
will not. HPSO, I can tell you, is not going to do that.
Right.
And I don't blame them. I wouldn't do it either. And I've told my students, I said, look, that is a benefit. However, don't expect that benefit to apply to you if you're already an LCSW in your state or an LMSW in your state or an LBSW in your state, because even though you're a student, you'll pay the student rate, but you're not going to get malpractice as a student. You're going to need professional malpractice, and you can get it through HPSO, and they'll give you probably a 10% discount because,
Yeah,
well, that's the
I
deal
think,
we all have.
I think that's the solution
Yeah.
for it, is that HPSO will give us a discount offer, and then
Yeah.
we can revise that wording. And
Yeah.
so they're, yeah, I think that'll take care of it.
Yeah.
But they were interested. They certainly, HPSO is interested. Of
Sure.
course, they want to get their hooks in as soon as possible too.
Uh-huh.
So,
Sure.
yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think the 10% discount is adequate. It's what I get for being a BCD. I
Yeah.
think, that's perfectly adequate.
Okay.
And they all accepted that and go, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
They got that, they got that. Now, if HPSO wants to issue them 2 policies, that's between HPSO
Yeah,
and,
right.
because they are a student intern, even on the doctoral level, but they are in professional practice in a different setting. So if they want 2 policies, that's none of my business. But
Yeah.
those are the intricacies I hope y'all iron out with those.
Yeah.
folks. Okay. So that takes us to website postings. And by the way, I think I'm going to let that horse go too about the malpractice and the student. I can let that one go, right? I don't need to bring that one
Yeah,
up.
we're going to handle that.
Okay, great. Y'all need to tell me, Joel, you've beat that horse to death. Quit talking about it, because I know there's a lot going on, and my mode is just to keep talking about it until it happens or dies or something. So I'm going to let that one go. The next one is the membership levels on the website. Honestly, I've not looked. Were those rascals posted with their fee structure?
Yes, let me share that. Let's find the page.
So if that's out there, we should be starting to collect a few
That's not what I want.
members.
Yeah, I think that what's holding us up is that we also want to do a blast on some of this and, get some interest going that way.
Sure.
Here we go. So can you see that page?
No, ma'am, it still says Zoom more than meeting. You might have to unshare and reshare again.
Yeah.
Oh, I was trying to get rid of that screen. I wondered where that came from.
How about
We've
now?
got it now. We've got it now.
Okay. So there's the graduate student. We haven't done anything to change that at this point. Once we've talked to HPSO, I'll update the statement about the liability insurance to reflect whatever they tell us. Here's the associate clinical member. As far as I know, this hasn't changed, the benefits.
Right,
There's the affiliate member. I took out the statement about HPSO on there because I doubt that they'll be offered anything. And then the academic membership with its
Right.
description and those same benefits.
and where's the clinical membership or the BCD comes into play?
I did not put that under membership because it gets very confusing for the BCDs. Because if they see themselves as a member, they keep trying to use the membership renewal instead of the BCD renewal.
Could we have a link that says clinical membership and then have that link them back to the BCD page? Because what if they're a new BCD or want to be applying and they go to this page?
Well, let me show you. If you go to certification
Uh-huh,
and why certify, there's all the benefits of certification. Click
right,
here to apply.
right,
There's also, there's another link somewhere to apply right there.
right. That's
That's
true,
on every page.
right.
And if
So I'm
you go
wondering on the,
to-
I'm wondering on the membership level page, could we have a link? Just simply state board certified diplomat, or whatever the term is, membership, and have that link to
Yeah.
what you just showed me. That way it's circular. In other words, even if they go to that page, they click it, it puts them on that, because I don't want a new BCD or someone who's not one that's qualified to go here and say, oh, I'd like to be a member. Well, there's not a spot for me. I want them to
Yeah.
figure out how to get there.
I understand that. And my experience over the past 3 years is if you let them think of themselves as a member rather than a certificate, it causes major problems.
Well, we got to explain it somehow, because
Yeah.
how do we get folks from the membership thought process to, I need to be applying for a BCD, because I don't want them to just to turn it off and go away, because people will do that.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we can't be a little bit more descriptive about what that all is, that a member is a BCD is a member
Right,
type of argument there in front of them in the same lineup that you have here. And at the
Mhm.
very top of it should be the BCD member type, and then an explanation of it, and then links to how they can get their BCD. But I think that's where they would go to. Logically, that's where that page they would go to get their next level of membership. And that's the point we tell them, well, that's the BCD, and here's the next steps to do that.
but I think it looks good right here. I think this is
Yeah.
all looking pretty good.
So
The-
pretty much pull this information
Uh-huh.
onto the membership page.
Yeah,
Can I make one recommendation about how we're labeling this BCD? And this is something y'all would not know because you're not in the profession.
This has been discussed in the website committee. A
When y'all
lot.
say advanced generalist, those terms are way inappropriate for the BCD. What that means in social work is like a family practitioner. That's not clinical social. Clinical social work in and of itself is a specialty. So I would put advanced clinical practice, not advanced generalist. That word generalist is way wrong here, because we're not certifying generalist practitioners. If they're working for CPS, that ain't gonna cut it for clinical practice. If they're working for some social service agency, that's not gonna cut it. We're talking about hospitals, schools, clinics, private practice. Those are clinicians.
where
That
did this term come from, Mary?
historical, been there for years.
Yeah, it's historical. This is what it's always been. And
Right.
Brian in particular has been asking for this change.
He's right.
I don't know if you remember, and I've asked him to do it. I'm not sure why it didn't happen. I asked him to bring it up to the board.
All you
Well, I
have to do
don't,
is
I
take-
don't think this is,
Because it's not a change I felt comfortable making without direction.
I don't think this is a board decision.
It's a
Is
website.
it?
No,
I think it's just a revision. I think we can make that. Brian wanted the clinical practice as well.
Yes.
he's
Let's
right.
just, let's make that change.
Okay,
Let
I'll
me
make
give
that change. It's going to take a while to find every place that it is on the website, but I'll start with this page.
Well, let me give you a further rationale of how social work is structured. When you get an MSW, we have two tracks, for example, here at Angelo State. One is clinical track and the other one's advanced generalist. Advanced generalist is more macro, grant writing, community. Where clinical, we're talking assessment, diagnosis, and treatment of mental disorder. So our doctoral degree specifically is an advanced clinical practice and is designated. So all you'd have to do is take out the word generalist and substitute the word clinical, and that will fix it throughout. So that's the only real change. But boy, that raises a lot of questions with my own students. They're like, well, why do I want a certification in advanced generalist practice? I'm a clinical social. They see themselves very differently.
Yeah.
But anyway, I didn't know that was brought up, but that's pretty cool that it was. At least I'm thinking somewhere like the rest of the rest of the world. Okay, and then I think we can lay to rest the clarification of what's a student. A student is a student as long as they're enrolled, and we do reserve the right to ask them for proof of enrollment if y'all choose to. It's perfectly fine.
Okay.
Okay, so should that be changed from graduate student to just student?
I think so, but that's
Okay,
because you could be a baccalaureate level student, a master's student, a DSW doctoral level student, or a PhD doctoral level student.
Now, this decision's already been made by the acceptance of the different classifications of student.
And then y'all are going to work out the insurance thing on students who are licensed, and typically those are only on the doctoral level. That's all you got to worry about there. So,
so,
okay,
and I can handle that by just adding a couple questions to the membership form.
right. And I think collecting that data on that form is a wonderful thing. I really do. It'll help us understand who we have here too. That was old business, not related to two larger issues. The two larger issues that I think Chuck and I apologize, her name has slipped my mind. The person who couldn't make it this morning.
Christie.
Christy and Chuck had been working on a magazine.
Yeah.
It is a membership benefit, and Chuck and I have been working on journals, and since Christy's not here, Chuck, you want to just verbalize a little bit about the magazine?
Sure. I did make contact. We had a call set up with Mara Honecker. She's the editor of the Social Work Today, and had a great discussion. She's very eager to have us be a part of them.
Mary, could I do one thing, Chuck, real quick? Could I get you to unshare your screen and allow me to share the screen for the recording of what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Do y'all
And
see that?
it's she offered it for free. Obviously, they get their money elsewhere through all the ads and that you see on the page. So and I've put that in the list. We're evaluating others. The one that I haven't had any contact, and I just reached out again to them, was the Kimberly Poss, or and for the clinical social work journal.
Right.
And so I looked, and that's from Springer.
Correct.
Looking forward to getting back from them and getting some detail. They're the only one of the three, the other one being the mental health, had a impact factor that we could designate. Of course, this one wouldn't, because it's not a peer-reviewed journal, but
Correct.
a journal at all.
Correct.
So, but I think it's an important number to have. It's what most, certainly most people look at when they value a journal from afar. So that's part of it. I had promised you some detail on Friday, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Okay.
But we are moving ahead, and we will bring that as soon as I get that table complete. It'll come back to you and your committee for a recommendation to the board. But I think this recommendation can come at any time. It doesn't have to be timed to the board meeting, because this conversation, quite frankly, needs to move fairly quickly, because as we look at trying to broadcast the new member types, it's a pretty sad page on member benefits. And we really need something in there. So anyway, I think it needs to move fairly quickly. One other thing that needs to go in there, Mary, is, and this maybe should go to Rachel, but discounting. We need to ensure that we mention discounting to whatever function, whether it's an annual conference discounting or educational content as member benefits.
Right.
Put that in that page, because we have so little, we need to offer them something. So, but I think that'll play well with some of certainly the students should like that. But anyway, so that's where we're at. And I just got on the content side, which really doesn't go to this committee, but we're looking at two different sources for additional content for our LMS, for our educational program. So anyway, things are moving, not always as quickly as we want them, but they are moving.
Well, I wanted to share with you all, and for the recording, in case anyone views this, like that Social Work Today is a magazine. Other professional groups have a magazine. This is the American Psychological Association's magazine. It is not peer reviewed. It is a magazine like any other magazine, and much like Social Work Today. So, and then of course the APA has other journals. For example, their flagship journal is the American Psychologist, which I subscribe to. And then they have about 50 other journals you can get because they're their own publishing house. But the point is that it's okay to have a magazine, much like the Social Work Today, as a membership benefit. And that is really separate than a peer-reviewed journal. And I think as long as we make that clear, and we are very upfront about that, I think folks enjoy. I think Christy is right that folks will enjoy reading this, but I don't want any confusion about this being a peer-reviewed journal, because it is certainly not. It is a magazine like Psychology Today, the Monitor on Psychology, Counseling Today, so forth and so on. Those are all magazines.
And as you and I have talked before, Joel, the question is which comes first.
Right.
Right. I'm on the side of I'd rather see a journal come first and then the Social Work Today to help define that a little better. Because we don't have any other publication, I think our first one, I don't want us to be misleading about it.
Correct.
And now I'm not a social worker and I don't have a vote. So I just know, working with groups and journals for so many years, you know, that's what they really hang their hat on.
That's right.
And so if we want to get into that category, then I think that's where we have to follow as well. But that's not my decision. That's just my thought.
I don't disagree. The journal I was most hoping for was this one.
Yeah.
And I'll share my screen to give you the moniker for it.
And that's the one I'm waiting back from Kimberly on.
Correct.
Actually, I'm dealing with somebody else.
You are. And I
Yeah.
think it's going to have to be probably Kimberly's boss that responded so rapidly, because Kimberly has been slow with me. to the point where I had to go to her boss to get her to even send us the email.
Yeah,
That's the problem with this journal. The problem with this journal, it's not its content. The content is outstanding. It truly is. The problem is, one, cost, but hopefully there would be a negotiated, like maybe the electronic version included in the membership fee and maybe a small upcharge of $50 for the paper version. Otherwise, it's over $200 if you buy it, because I'm going to discontinue it because I can't afford it anymore. With all my other, I subscribe to about 20 different journals every month, and it's about $3,000. And so I'm going to discontinue it just based on cost, not because of content. But the other problem is that customer service, as you're explaining, Chuck, with Kimberly,
Yeah.
is terrible.
yeah,
It's absolutely terrible. But the journal itself is solid and good. In fact, Carol Tosone at our conference was the outgoing editor of
Right.
the thing. And the current editor, Melissa Grady, responded immediately. And the higher ups in Springer responded immediately. But when it gets down to Miss Poss, I believe her name may be,
yeah. Kimberly Poss.
Kimberly, she is like vacant. And
You
I
know,
think,
I looked her up. Katie Lang is the person I'm talking with. She's the executive publisher. She's the one that responded to you. And I looked, you know, Kimberly is an associate editor, probably swamped up to her eyeballs, you know. God knows how many journals that she's editing.
Mhm.
But anyway, we went with her. In terms of cost, that's interesting because I had a good conversation with
David Fulmer.
David Fulmer. I don't know if you caught the first email exchange. He was born not too far away from where I was from,
I
in
read it.
Illinois. About 40 miles, 50 miles away, and luckily he's still a good Illinois fan, so that put him in good stead. But their charge on that journal is $50.
Yes, for 1 year.
For 1 year, and he out of the gate offered us $25.
He did, because he called me and told me he did.
Yeah.
He's Johnny on the spot.
So even if we look at a heavily discounted, the item that I didn't get clear with him, and this would be the next level of negotiation, is that $25 per journal, based upon a guarantee that we will provide X many subscriptions, or can we make it? Because if that's the case, then that's a minimum of $75,000 to $100,000 out of the budget to support that journal for the membership.
That's right.
And that's going to be hard to fly. But if it's a member discount we can offer, in which we don't suffer the cost, but the individual group or the
Sure.
individual member gets a discount. So I think that's probably where I'll be going with that if we can get it. But we'll have to see. I don't know how he feels about that.
One thing to talk with him about, and he's pretty excited, or he wouldn't have called me back. He called me probably 5 minutes after y'all hung up the phone. I've known David for years.
Yeah, okay.
And he told me exactly what you said about the $25. One way to negotiate this, to think about, is typically with our membership, they would get electronic access for free, which
Mhm.
they use Ingenta Connect.
Yeah.
So if you can get electronic access for the members and then have an optional, that $25 charge is optional if you want the paper copy.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, and that's not bad if that's the way it works. And maybe they want a little bit of money for electronic access as an administrative fee. I don't know. The same could be said for this. Electronic access for free or a small administrative charge through Science Direct, which I believe is who manages Springer's, I think it's called, it's either Springer Nature or Science Direct. I think it's Springer Nature because Elsevier is Science Direct, but their electronic platform, heavily discounted, if not free. But if you want the paper, I know for the Clinical Social Work Association, you get the electronic version of this for free with your membership dues. And I don't know what they have to pay for that. But if I want the paper copy, it's $50 a year, and you get 4 of these.
Yeah.
Whereas for David in 25, you get 2 of these, which is cost-wise equivalent for the member.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means electronically for the association for the electronic access. That's, I
Yeah.
think, the point.
Yeah. Okay. So that's good to know. But yeah, that difference in price, that markup for the paper is $25.
Yes.
Yeah. And so
50 for that.
okay.
That's what CSWA has going for them, but they get the electronic. It seems free to the member, but I'm sure CSWA pays something for it. I just don't know what it would be.
So he's offered, of course, you already get it. He's offered electronic access to the decision makers, which would be your committee and the EC. But I think the first question back to him will be, yeah, that's a pretty big lift for the group to pay for. And what can we do to help entice more readership for the hard copy, which would be this free electronic, and then we can get the other going and promote the hard copy for him. I mean, he doesn't, I think he only has, did he say 30,000? I think I know that's what USA or the Social Work Today is as well. So we actually represent a pretty big component of where that might go.
There's not 30,000 readers to this journal, I promise you that. There is
Okay.
to this. This one's a major publishing house. The Fulmer Group, this Fulmer Group is David Fulmer himself.
Yeah.
It used to be owned by Lyceum Press. Lyceum was purchased by Oxford, but
Yeah.
David maintained the journal. And I don't know why that was a decision he made. I would have sold it all to Oxford because they're a major publishing house, but
Yeah.
he did not. And they also published a school social work journal. So if we
Right.
have any school social workers, that could be an optional, if you're interested kind of thing. You can even discuss with David
Yeah.
if you wanted to, not any cost to ABCSW, but just as an option if you're interested in that line of work.
He does seem to have a Max Fulmer working for him in marketing. So it must be his son or daughter. I guess it could be a daughter as well. So
I've never met that one, but yeah.
yeah.
The
So yeah,
problem
it's a pretty small organization.
It is.
Sure.
And that's the problem is sometimes David, while well-intentioned, like last night I received in the mail, number 2 of 2020. Well, I've got to get back with him. And I go, David, where's 2021? And by the way, we're almost through with 2022. I don't mind giving you money because I like you, but I want the product.
Yeah, really.
Whereas these folks, the product shows up. However, getting a hold of them in customer service, I'd rather go play in the interstate with a Mack truck. I mean, so there's
Yeah.
the third option that I have not shared, and I want to take a moment to show you the website to it. And I'm going to start making the call to set up an introduction for you, Chuck, is the Journal of Psychotherapy Integration. I do not subscribe to this journal. I used to, but again, you cannot afford everything. This journal is the publication of the Society for Exploration and Psychotherapy Integration, but the American Psychological Association that publishes it under their third-party publishing house, not the APA proper, but their third-party publishing house, without doubt are perfectly okay with additional sponsors of a journal. They're not going to have a problem with that, because the more readership to the journal, the better it is what they're gonna say. This one has some benefits, but it's also got drawbacks. And you can see their stuff is, the APA is almost unbeatable when it comes to publishing, for what it's worth. But nevertheless, the drawback is that it's published by the APA, which typically caters to psychologists.
Yeah.
And because I have a PhD in it, I don't seem to mind, but a lot of master's level social workers don't even qualify to be a member.
Yeah.
However, they don't care about that. They'll put ABCSW's name on the front of that journal right beside the Society of Exploration of Psychotherapy Integration and move along, because APA's moniker is not on this journal. It's their secondary publishing house. Educational Publishing
Ah,
is their moniker. It's like an imprint of the APA.
yeah.
But it
Okay.
doesn't say APA, so that's a plus. The other plus is the APA is huge and they can make it very affordable. The other plus is that they're Johnny on the spot. Because they're so massive, they produce thousands of these every quarter when it comes out. The other plus is that you might get discounts on other journals published by the APA on the electronic side, because this is
Mhm.
electronic and paper. So we would want the electronic for free, or maybe a small administrative charge. And then if you want the paper, you have to pay for that at a greatly discounted rate. But as a benefit, perhaps, and I'm going to share something else with you, perhaps they would give you free or discounted access to other APA journals. So you go, well, where did you get that idea? I got that idea from this organization, which I'm a member of, the International Association for Correctional and Forensic Psychology. And if I log in, I'll show you how this thing works. So I've logged into the website, and under membership, I can go Sage Journals, and they use the journal Criminal Justice and Behavior, but I've got free access to 55 journals, and the only
Yeah.
one I pay for is this one. But I've got access to every single one of these journals that Sage publishes. Now that is the best deal going for $75 a year is all my membership rate is. That makes them an extraordinarily popular organization. If you wanted to go with this group, the journal is called Research on Social Work Practice. So you would want to work out the same deal with Sage as the International Association of Correctional and Forensic Psychology does for their members. So except for Criminal Justice and Behavior, you would want our journal to be Research on Social Work Practice. I'll pull up the aim and scope. And as you can see, it publishes a wide range of articles. It is highly respected. This is a major top tier journal in social work. When I mean major, I mean NASW can't even touch this. This is a majorly respected journal. Bruce Thayer being the editor of it out at Florida State, the dean of the School of Social Work. Highly respected man. I know him. He's wonderful, highly respected, but broadly interpreted practice. Now, notice it is not limited to clinical practice. It's practice. Broadly interpreted, but it includes behavior analysis, psychotherapy, case management, couples, families, small groups, but also, and here's the drawback, macro practice too. So it's not purely clinical. That's the drawback to this. However, the paper version is $50. The electronic version is free. And I get access to 55 other journals that I just showed y'all that I may or may not ever read, but they're all free to me electronically, not in paper, but electronically. You can't beat that with a
Yeah.
stick, even if you try.
That's a good one to look at. Thanks.
So I can set up some sort of, unless you just want to go for it, I can set up some introductions there.
No, I prefer an introduction.
Okay,
Yeah, just an email introduction and I'll go from there.
well, that was a lot about journals, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But I understand this is important to us. And I don't know how else to do it other than jump in and start
That's right.
rattling the saber, so to speak, and getting it done. That's kind of my mode, so. The last thing that and I think we'll continue to talk about journals as we move forward. That's going to be a major benefit, magazine and journals. The last thing I wanted to formally present in this meeting is a document that I sent to Chuck about specialty certifications. And of course, this is only really for the recording and Mary because Chuck's seen it, but I will share the document with you. And this is a document I sent to Chuck about our existing specialty, not the BCD, that's untouchable, really, but the specialty stuff. And this is simply ideas. This is not formal in any way. I think it's going to take a lot of discussion, and I don't think you'll do all of it at once. I think it'll be incremental, if it even occurs, but something to think about. We have psychoanalysis, we have clinical supervision, and we have practice with children and families. To lump in children and families really is apples and oranges with most other organizations, in fact, all other organizations. So to reformulate that one, you can grandfather them in if you wanted and then make all the new ones go through the process. And they can grandfather into both if they chose, but it would be recommended to discontinue practice with children and families and reformulate it into clinical child and adolescent social work and couple and family psychotherapy, with how that would break down. So then you would have 4, hence the numbering, certifications at that point. That could be a step in and of itself right there. The next layer is what new certifications would be desired. And so I came up with ideas. They're simply ideas. And I tried not to think of specific areas, because if you get too micro with a certification, you won't have enough people to get it to make it worth your time. It's got to be broad enough and an important enough substantive area to matter. Probably the one that's going to matter the most is cognitive behavior therapy to be the counterpart to psychoanalysis, because there's a lot of CBT stuff out there in our world and we don't have that. Other possibilities would be group psychotherapy, substance abuse, and that would need to be reworded. Clinical practice and substance use would be more accurate, or something to that effect. Clinical geriatric, clinical assessment, forensic and correctional, because our cousin disciplines are certified in these things and we're not. Medical and school. Now, I don't have an agenda. I don't think all of those would pan out. If they do, fine. If they don't, fine. But it's a place to start the discussion. And then the notes down here is just ideas, is that each one of these certifications is going to need to have some sort of group of people to manage them. I mean, not you guys as staff, but members. What if Mary has a question about school social work? Well, I can field most of those, but I'll be honest. I mean, I know quite a bit about clinical social work in all areas, but maybe it would be nice to have one of our members who's probably a BCD that does school social work that would be a part of that. If not, I think the committee could fill in the blanks, but that would be nice. And it would certainly be a recruitment tool to be involved with the organization. Just as an example. Next would be, well, how do you roll it out? And these notes here, I've changed my mind a jillion times. Just ignore them if they make no sense. They probably don't. But how do you roll them out? Well, it's the same criteria as our existing certification. It should be a standardized set of criteria, same fee structure, same everything. It's just the name on the certificate changes once they qualify.
Yeah.
That's about it. Any thoughts or criticisms or ideas?
I will say the new specialties that you've listed, those terms come up in applications very often.
Yeah.
As they're,
course.
the other areas for any of the applicants. So yeah, I think all of those are good, and hopefully we can get those going.
Now, some members are going to challenge this and say, well, why didn't you put military social work in there because there's so many of us? Well, let's think about that. Military social work, having been in the uniform as a clinical social worker, is clinical social work. There's no specialty. It's the BCD. However, certain members in the military may have specialties beyond that. That's where these come into play.
They all do.
Right. And that may be worth having them a specialty, but to have one in military is redundant with the BCD. Unless people want it, then I'm fine with it. Then you're going to have the VA folks. Well, VA social work falls into two groups: medical and then
And
clinical
geriatric.
mental health. And there could be geriatric. But notice there's no certification in Veterans Administration social work in here. That would be redundant with the BCD.
Right.
These are specialties beyond the BCD, the Advanced Clinical Practice Certification. They're specialties. And only 3 of them are setting specific because those settings are truly unique. Forensic correctional, you're talking about getting on a witness stand. You're talking about incompetent to stand trial, not guilty by reason, and working in jails and prisons. Having done that for years, that is very unique. Medical social work is unique because it's more oncology, cardiology, ICU. That's different than clinical mental health, but typically they are clinical social workers. Like Lucia falls into that category right here. Not in her private practice world, but in her VA world. And then school social work, one of our doctoral students is actually living in Chicago, Illinois right now. She is a licensed clinical social worker, a school social worker, but there's no certification in her world other than from NASW. And I'm just thinking this may be worthwhile, but I'm open to other options. I'm open to people saying they don't like it. I just am trying to figure out ways to increase the membership specifically on the BCD level that could be useful for folks.
And the one thing that I see with the changing the practice with children and their families to the other 2, we need to go through the application and create new applications for each of those. And then update what's there. But that
Agreed.
I don't think that would take a really long time.
I
I
don't
think that
think
would
so
be fairly
either.
easy.
But again, the board's got to approve all this. This is a
Right.
major deal, but I agree. It shouldn't be that challenging. It just becomes increased volume is what it becomes. And if you will, Mary, your job will likely get busier. I mean, you might need help. I don't know how that works in your world, but it's going to be more because you're going to have people tag into this once it becomes known.
So who will establish the approval process, the steps for this to happen?
Beyond what we already have,
Yeah.
I would want to replicate that in a document, a Word document, replicate what we have, fashion it for the specific specialty, and submit it to this committee for approval, and then it would go to you, Chuck, to submit to the board for approval. And then that would be the process I would
Okay.
recommend.
Yeah, I think that's what we could do now then, is to get your committee to approve the entire process
Okay,
as a committee recommendation, and that flows directly to the board, not to the EC, but to the board for consideration.
right.
We might run it by the EC only because, you know, they're good at, once it gets past there, it's going to get past the board.
Of
So
course.
I would guess then that this committee should put forth a proposal that's specific to what it is and how it's going to be implemented. Because that'll be the questions they'll ask is, how do we determine that group psychiatry or psychotherapy, how do we get that designation on there? Are there extra steps for that?
Like there already are for psychoanalysis, clinical
Right.
supervision, and practice with children. And
How do
families.
you verify that, Mary?
We have applications that also include the peer evaluations like the BCD.
Right?
I'll print out it's hard to like print the application from the front end of the website because it's multiple pages, but I can print it out from the back end
Okay,
and send copies to both of you so that
Okay.
you can look at it and
yeah, because we'd have to fashion that to each and every designation.
right.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, once you send that out, we can put this together in a
Yeah, I'll take care
formal
of that today.
And I think
recommendation.
going slow is acceptable. For example, reformulating practice with children and families and implementing cognitive behavior therapy could be step one. And then once we get that under our belt and our feet underneath this, move into step two, which could be one or two of the other ones, and phase it
Yeah.
in over time before jumping in completely, because that could be overwhelming doing all of these things at once.
So that's a point is of this 8 or 9 or 10, however many you have there, what's a sense of priority that the committee would recommend?
In all
Meaning-
honesty, I would, and I know it's just me, this is not the committee, but reformulating children and families to be
Right.
child, adolescent, and couple and family is a big deal. Then probably cognitive behavior therapy and group
Okay.
psychotherapy after that. Those are
That's
the
what I
major
think.
modalities.
That's what I think there should be an order of priority that you're recommending.
Okay,
And then I think that becomes an easier task.
okay,
I think that the CRT I think that's, everybody's gonna go for that. We see that already. So
CBT.
CBT.
Yeah.
I got
I will
into the
be-
political
I will
landscape.
never recommend a certification for CRT. That ain't gonna happen in my world.
I know you're that Republican down in
It's
Texas.
against the
I
law
get
in the state of Texas, so. So,
it.
and I'm a tenured professor, but like to stay that way, so.
That's right.
I'm an
But anyway,
employee of the
that's
state.
what I think. And you can take a chunk of 3 or 4 of them. And
Right,
we can have alternates down there, but I think we ought to get the weight of the recommendation from the committee on those that we think have a good, decent chance of moving forward.
I'll try to write this up by next meeting, and hopefully if we maybe remind folks of attendance, we can get it
Yeah,
edited and agreed upon. But Mary, I also need to know from you, I mean, there's many of us and one of you. So I think we probably need to pace this somehow to the point where it's not completely, because you can't see the rest of my office, but I've got books mounted and I mean, I live in a world where I've got research. I'm presenting next week at a national conference on clinical mental health, personality disorders. I've got classes I teach on the doctoral level. I've got things I read. It's just everywhere around me. And I fire stuff off. I mean, I'm here from 7:30 in the morning to almost midnight, 4 nights a week, and I'm off on Friday. So I fire stuff off. You'll see emails at midnight from me. I mean, that's not unusual, but I can be very overwhelming. So I'm not trying to pressure. I don't want anyone to think I'm pressuring,
That's really nice to hear.
because it can get overwhelming.
It can.
At the end of the day, you take your orders from Chuck, not us. And so Chuck and you will pace whatever y'all want to pace.
Yeah.
And that's y'all's deal. Our job is to give you the content and the idea and the approval vote, but it may not happen
I
because
think
it's
this
just not
is-
doable.
Internally, Mary, I think this is where we have to look at the roles of other individuals like Garrett.
And I think Garrett's going to be a big help with things
Yeah.
like this. He's very tech savvy.
Yeah.
I haven't had a lot of time to work with him on the back end of the website. I know Renee has to some extent.
Yeah.
The last time
Well-
we tried to go over something, my technology was not cooperating. The call kept freezing.
Well, I think he's got those
But
kind of skills. And
He's
certainly
got the
eager.
skills, yes. So I think.
I haven't yet defined what his other conflicts of effort might be with Tally. So,
Right.
but we can get through that. So, yeah,
And worst case scenario, one of the things we're doing with NASPAG is bringing in a contractor to work on the LMS for them.
that'd be great.
So
help you
that's
a lot.
also something we could look at if we needed to.
Okay, all right.
I'm short of time, but give me one more minute. One more minute. I know I'm short of time, and my apologies, but we're talking about member benefits. Okay, so this is a publishing house called Guilford Press.
Mhm.
Guilford Press is a major publisher in mental health texts that we use in clinical social work. And this is a recent advertisement that they just sent to me this morning, but I get these in paper form in the mail. I get these all the time. I mean, I get them like routinely, but you can quickly go to their website.
Yep.
And I'll drag this over. And, you know, they even list psychology, psychiatry, and social work, and they publish thousands of high-level, highly respected books. And they even publish a few journals, but none of them directly related to social work, though the psychoanalytic review for our certification folks in psychoanalysis would be nice. You know, systemic therapy for our couples and families, and I get personality disorders, but the rest of them, not really that interesting to social work, but nevertheless, they exist. They offer discounts to certain members of professional organizations. So I get a discount on everything they sell because I'm an APA member. Could we not negotiate with them that if you're a American Board of Clinical Social Work member, you might get that 10% discount? Because they give out discounts like hotcakes, folks.
Yeah.
Like they just sent me an email where they're going to knock off with this code 20% discount. And if I gave you all that code, you'd get that discount too. They don't care where it comes from. So they give out discounts like no tomorrow.
Yeah.
I would ask for 20% and free shipping. And if they said no, go to 10, but they're going to give you the 20. The point of that is that it's another membership benefit that we can offer that other groups do, that it matters to folks.
And doesn't cost us, the society, any money.
Not a dime.
Yeah.
That's all the time I have. I just wanted to, I'm trying my best to fill the membership benefit list.
Yep. That's what needs to be filled.
Yeah,
I truly believe that. And if we can have a page of discounts to different journals as part of a membership, that'll be nice. All right, Joel, thank you very much.
You're welcome, and
I'll be
y'all have a
seeing
great
you.
one.